Okay, so Angus, you want to give I guess there's some new deadlines for things for reporting and stuff, things that are give you more time, time cushion.
Yeah, so I'll start with that just briefly, and then we do have Paul on the line as well as members of the Board of Health, and they can talk in more detail about the vaccination effort. But we did get notice recently that the CARES Act was extended. The initial deadline for incurring eligible costs was December 30th of 2020. That's now been extended to December 31st of 2021. So I think that's very good news. It expands the eligibility of costs that we would incur this calendar year that are coronavirus related. So I just wanted to share that piece of information. It also extended forward the required quarterly reports a bit. So that does give us a little bit more breathing room. Then the main purpose of this discussion is to update on the vaccines. There's a active working group that our health agent has really led the charge on. I think it's been a terrific effort from my observation. And so I'd like him to share whatever he's comfortable sharing at this point. There's still probably more unknown than known, but there has been a lot of progress made. And very notably, just on January 6th, following the completion of the required paperwork, the town was officially approved by the Commonwealth as an official vaccine program provider. So that was a big procedural step, and definitely ought to recognize the good work of the health department. So Paul, do you want to give just some insight on some of the planning that's going on and some of the what people can expect looking ahead?
Yes, thanks, Angus. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
So yeah, as Angus says, right now we're in phase one of the distribution rollout plan from the state. Over the weekend, Thursday night, and then Saturday all day, we joined up with the 6 other communities as a regional approach to vaccinate the first responders. Between the 2 days, Thursday and Saturday, the group, we vaccinated 500 individuals at the Newbury Council on Aging. I got a meeting later this week with the same group to come up with a vaccination plan and schedule for the remainder individuals in group 1, which include the home-based healthcare workers, as well as the healthcare workers doing non-COVID facing care. So I have received several inquiries from residents who meet those criterias. Have added them to a list, so when we do hold the next clinic for the remainder of phase 1, I can reach out to them. So if anyone knows of anyone that does qualify for the remainder or any portion of phase 1 vaccinations, have them send me an email. I would add them to my list. That way, when we do schedule a clinic, hopefully within the next 2 weeks for the remainder of phase 1, I can include them in our numbers to get the vaccine, so we have enough vaccine on hand for those individuals. Looking forward to phase 2, that's where West Newbury bigger involvement is going to be is with the senior population, 75 plus, or people with 2 or more comorbidities, and then followed by that, people 65 and older. We are working on plans. Currently, the Council on Aging sent out a mailing, I believe today, a survey to all seniors. We'll take this data, we'll review it. From that data, we can gather the numbers, and based on the numbers that want vaccinations, then we can decide when and where we can hold a clinic. It's either going to be at the annex or at one of the schools, or we may do it regional with the same group that we've been working with. It all depends what we get back for numbers and also when the state opens it up. Right now, the states, according to their timeline, phase 2 does not open up until late February, early March. Again, these timelines are fluid. It could be sooner or later, depends what's going on with the federal government for the rollout of vaccine. So we're working on it. The seniors have been asking quite frequently over the last several weeks. So yes, the seniors are on the Board of Health's radar. And they will be our next catchment to vaccinate once we get through phase 1.
Anyone have any questions for Paul or?
One thing that you may have other questions, I don't want to dive right into the weeds, but one of the policy questions that's been presented with the town, and the board need not make a decision tonight, but just to make you aware, there is a authorized amount that can be billed to people's insurance providers for the administration of the vaccine, not for the vaccine itself, but for the administrative costs. And the state did confirm to Paul that the reimbursement rate is $45 for the 2 doses. So that's a policy question we're going to need to decide pretty soon, is whether we're going to charge.
What would be the administrative hoops to jump through in order to actually do that? In other words, okay, if there's no co-pays and no deductibles associated with it, then it really, if someone has insurance or someone has Medicare or whatever, then it isn't really costing the vaccinee anything, but
Money.
the administrative setup might be so burdensome that it's not even worth it. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, overtime.
Hey, Paul, you still on? Because my phone.
Yes. So
Is it true though that if you bring $50 up to recycling on Saturdays, you can get a vaccine from you behind the wood chip pile in the Boy Scout thing?
it was. We had so many people over Saturday. We brought it up to 500 now.
Okay. Do you know?
So get back. Yeah. So back to the.
Hold on. Are you giving are they giving out the Pfizer or Moderna? Because people have asked for some strange.
All the boards of health currently are getting Moderna.
Okay. Thank you.
So getting back to the billing the insurance company. So the way the program works through the online registration process is a system called PrepMod, and all that information, once you close out the event, close out the clinic, if you do decide to build an insurance company, the insurance information is already in the database and it automatically gets sent to the insurance companies, I believe. I'm not sure what happens to it after that. And the other thing that may play a role in this, if we do it jointly with another region, I don't know who gets the money, who the money gets returned to or goes to if you do it jointly. I don't know if it's the venue host, in like this particular case, Newburyport. I don't know if Newburyport will get all the reimbursements because they're the one who hosts the clinic or not. So it's just something like Andy said. It's
Who's
out there.
giving
We
the
just got to
vaccine?
work through it and see if it's. What was that?
Who's giving the vaccine? I'm sorry, my phone.
The vaccine's distributed by nurses.
No, okay. So it's not like CVS, or it's not like
No.
Like it might.
Volunteer
It might.
nurses.
Okay. But where do they get the? What is it? Okay, well, I can talk to you about this later. Never mind. It's just my own person. I was just curious. No big deal.
I would say, Glenn, ask the questions. I know there's a lot of questions out in the community. So I would say if you have a question, there's probably residents who have the same question.
Okay, sorry, because my phone was kicked off, so I didn't want to seem to taking up too much time. So, so the nurses are giving the health nurses are giving the vaccine. Where are they getting that from? So, like my company did CVS. They partnered with CVS, and then CVS pharmacists came in, did the clinic, took the health cards. You had to have your insurance card. You had to fill out that form, and then you obviously got the vaccine. And then for the Pfizer one, which was Pfizer, you have to get it again. We have another scheduled day, 21 days after. So when you get the first shot, and I'm not sure if Moderna is 2 shots like Pfizer, so these people are then committed to come back to that clinic to get their second shot. Is that correct? They can't get it somewhere else.
Correct.
Actually,
Yes
you
and no.
can.
You need it. You can get it somewhere else, but you need to get the same vaccine. So if you get Pfizer, the first round, you need to get Pfizer 21 days with a plus or minus
After 21
4-day
days,
range after 21 days. Or if you get the Moderna, then it's a 20-day spread before you need a second dose. So that's all explained when people register for the vaccine, when their time comes up to register for a clinic at that particular moment. All that information is provided to, just like any other vaccination, all the information is provided to the individual before and after they get vaccinated.
That must be a nightmare for people to track it. But I guess there's no major database that, like, if I get it with the public nurse in Newburyport in conjunction with you, then I decide to get it at, somewhere else. That's okay.
I think the state has a statewide database, Glenn,
Got it.
that they're recording. Isn't there, from what I read today, at least, Paul, it sounded like when you get vaccinated, you go into the state database with the date, where it was done, which vaccine you had, and that information is then available to anybody who has access to that database.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, how are you staffing, or how is West Newbury staffing its administration of the vaccine?
Well, it's pretty much going to be by volunteers,
Yep.
working with the police, fire, EMA, as well as the public health nurse, who has rounded up, a whole clinical team of school nurses from all the towns. So everyone's going to have a little piece of the pie here as to, what they could bring to the table to run the clinic. So like I said, it depends on the size of the clinic. It's going to depend on how many volunteers we need. That's going to depend on whether we do it in-house at the annex, or if we have to go to a different venue like one of the schools, or if we go a regional approach. So again, it's still fluid. Things are moving every week, sometimes forward, sometimes back. But pretty much all volunteer, helping out to do the clinic.
So obviously the appropriate
will
people.
you need volunteers who are non-medical professionals?
Yes, we already have a list of non-medical professionals. So if anyone's out there, they can sure send me an email. I'll add them to the list.
Okay.
Depends on the size of the clinic. We may not need them at a small clinic, but we'll definitely need them at a larger clinic. And we need to have, if the clinic needs to have 10 volunteers, we need to have 15 volunteers ready to go, because at any point, anyone could get sick or something else happens that they can't attend the clinic. So we need backup.
Okay. So I guess we want that to be publicly well known that additional volunteers would be really good, right?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
we need volunteers. We don't need thousands of them, but yes,
Right.
anyone that wants to volunteer, send me an email, and then we can go from there. I'll let respond back, put you on a database, put you on a list, reach out to you if we need anyone. But again, it all depends. If we do anything small in-house at the annex for the seniors, then we're going to need less volunteers than if we do a regional approach for the general population when that comes out. So it all depends what type of clinic, what catchment we're doing, and where the venue is as to how many. Like when we did Newburyport, 7 communities worked in Newburyport, and I think West Newbury we had 6-7 people participating for our West Newbury individuals participating in the Newburyport clinic. So.
Okay, great.
But to that, Paul, if you could just speak briefly to the need for the initial training on the prep mod. So, if someone is inclined to, volunteer down the road, we'd probably want to get them trained sooner so that they're ready to jump in when needed. Is that right?
Yes and no. The prep mod, it's still a new program, so we're working the bugs out of it. But the original thought was we needed a prep mod for the registration process when you get to the clinic. But they ended out the best way to do the registration when you got to the clinic was on paper. So at that point, at the regular clinic in Newburyport, the only time that really needed to handle or understand the prep mod was the nurses at the nurses station. So that's, handled by, a separate, a team of people. So again, it's all fluid. If we go to a bigger venue, more throughput, then yes, the registration people at that time would need to have, registration on the computer versus paper. But again, it all depends on the size. So as a new report, we did 250 or so per day. It worked best just to have the registration done on paper. And then the only computer was at the vaccination station to put the information in. On that way, it was ready to go to upload to the state's database.
Okay.
Sounds like fun.
The Board of Health would like to comment.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I think everything's going well.
Well, thank you all for your hard work, and we'll keep everyone informed of any future developments, when times change, when things will be available, and so forth. Our next agenda item is a request to apply for a Mass Trails grant for a proposed Mill Pond all-access trail. And before we start, I just want to know what is the Mass Trails Association? Where is this Commonwealth money? That's my question.
And what all access mean?
Right. So is who's going to speak for this? Patricia, are you going to speak this?
I'll open it up, but I
Sure.
have Ryan here from the Mill Pond Committee and Brad Boucher from Park and Rec and also Open Space. And Brad is our Mass Trails Grant expert, having applied for at least 2 of them that I know of and gotten
Okay.
at least. But yeah, so Mass Trails is a Commonwealth program, and it has funding available, which is to be matched by the town in different proportions. And obviously the greater proportion of the match, the more favorable it will be looked upon. We have asked for 30,000 from, not yet, but we applied for eligibility for CPA money to the extent of 30,000 as the town's match. And we would be asking for the Commonwealth Mass Trails Grant Program for an additional 30,000. 60,000 is the number that was put forward by a landscape architect contacted by Brad for the scope of work that's described in the application for eligibility under the CPA, and generally described in the email that I submitted to Mill Pond Committee and to the Selectmen.
Okay. Brad, what's the usual rate of success of these kind of grant applications?
The Baker administration strongly supports the Mass Trails program. The last year they had over $3 million to grant to various organizations across the Commonwealth.
As a little background, I'm going to jump in. This is Ryan Goodwin from Mill Pond Committee. Patricia had approached us that Open Space was looking at a number of areas throughout town for an all-access trail. Mill Pond was agreed by the Open Space Committee as the most probable area for something like this to occur. And so we have been, speaking with Patricia over the course of the last year on such a proposal. And in those discussions, we wanted to possibly take this a step further to improve the entire waterfront area of accessibility. Right now, we have a dock into the. Thank you very much for sharing that. A dock that's going into the water. We've removed some legacy, broken down concrete picnic tables and benches. We've worked with Angus and the anniversary committee. Angus, can you remind me?
Bicentennial. Yeah.
Bicentennial committee. I couldn't come up with the word on securing funds to replace those, but we're looking at maybe doing a little bit more of an encompassing project. This serves, a couple of different problems that are happening with Mill Pond. One is accessibility, most important aspect. Two, we have a deteriorating waterfront from encroachment of vehicles as the road that comes down that you can see during the yellow outlined area. They're becoming more and more damaged and limited parking. There's only about 4 to 6 spots in the parking area there, or else the road gets blocked up. So possibly looking at improving a much more park style access to the waterfront, something that's more visually appealing, something that will limit the erosion that's occurring with the vehicular traffic and promote accessibility for all of our town's population to be able to enjoy Mill Pond, not just those who are fleet-footed and can navigate the waterfront's architecture as it stands.
So I guess what we're asking the selectmen for is permission to prepare the grant application, which would need to be signed off by the selectmen as representatives of the town. Mill Pond is established in our open space survey as the most popular single recreation area in town, and its waterfront, which makes it even more special. And the fact that it is not accessible to people of different abilities is a shame. The open space plan, since the beginning, I believe, since about 1999, has always had as one of its goals in establishing more accessible trails in town. So I'd like to see us finally bring this to a reality in the coming years. And we're open to any questions you might have.
I have some, Archie. Can I ask?
I have one easy one first. Would we have to do anything with the? Obviously, we can see it on the map there. The dirt road going down to the area. Would anything have to be done to that?
Do you mean the area that's not outlined in yellow?
No, just the access road itself. Did the architects have anything to that needed to be changed?
Well, the object of this the project would be to have an architect look at the delineated project area and do a survey of it and make a recommendation for a concept design that would certainly accomplish one of Ryan's goals, which is make the roadway less damaging to the existing waterfront and make the waterfront more accessible. Now, we already have sort of de facto handicap parking spaces, but it could be that the handicap parking spaces might be moved. One of the other ideas was that perhaps vehicular access down to the lower pond area, which is what we're calling this delineated project area, would be limited to vehicles which do have people with handicaps. So in answer to your question, part of the roadway will be looked at, but the roadway itself is not being looked at for accessibility.
Okay.
And to be clear, Archie, this is a proposal to, solicit a design. We do not have a design at this point right now.
Okay, I didn't know how much had been decided by the $60,000 fee. That was very, very rough then, I guess.
Yeah, and so it's important that you understand that the concept design that we're asking, would be asking a landscape architect to present to us, would then be subject to further town review, not only by the committees dealing with it, on a daily basis, but by the selectmen and town meeting, because any improvements would have to be finally approved for funding, either through grant, CPA, or a combination of all of the above by town meeting.
I'll just jump in. This is Brad. The way that the landscape architect wrote the scope of work, they would prepare a couple concepts for improvements at the recreation area, and those comments would be reviewed by the town prior to going public. Typically, changes are made at that point, and then we envision a public meeting where it's a bit of a design workshop where people bring all of their ideas to the table, so that it's a sort of a people-centered model where the residents and the users get to really decide what the future of the space is, rather than experts and elected officials.
So Brad or Patricia or Ryan, I'm not sure who to direct this to. The $60,000 number was an estimate by a landscape architect, or I'm just curious where the number actually came from.
That's
For
correct.
design.
That's correct. The number, the fee proposal
Yep.
the town received includes the preparation of an existing condition survey, which would be topo. It would also include resource area delineation, and take us from concept phase to 50%, and possibly even through Concom permitting.
Okay. And will you have to, will this require putting out an RFP to actually contract with somebody? Or I don't know if this falls into an area where under a certain limit you're able to.
That'd be a Mike question, but I would think it would.
It does not. The state, unless the town has procurement laws that requiring it to go out to bid, the state does not require towns to solicit proposals for horizontal work. But if it were like architectural, if we were to get it, really hire an architect to do stuff at the lodge, which isn't in the scope, then generally you do have to go out to bid for vertical construction.
It's interesting. So you referred to that as horizontal work.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the first time I've ever heard that. That's interesting.
The other thing that's important to know is that the deadline for filing the application to Mass Trails is February 1, which is why we asked to be on the agenda as soon as possible.
So
February 19th.
So Patricia, so this is just kind of a design thing. So we're looking, so hypothetically, it goes in, and in a couple of months, we hear back if we've, been awarded the grant, and then you're looking to have our matching funds go to our Springtown meeting, probably in the special town meeting, or for CPA funds matching that,
Right.
and then it all comes into fruition sometime late spring, and then maybe they come back and say we need to spend $1 million or 500,000 or whatever it is, and then we would bring that proposal back probably a year from now to annual town meeting to make those upgrades from this design.
Well, I think you skipped a couple of steps. Brad can speak to the timing of how soon Mass Trails grant is announced. But another key feature is that we look to the town, to the selectmen and the finance committee to decide how to do this. But the funds need to be advanced. The grant funds need to be advanced and paid by the town before being reimbursed from the grant funds. So where that delta, the 30 that we hope to get from CPA and the 30 needs to be fronted by the town, where that comes from would need to be decided by you all.
Okay.
My recommendation on that, if we do go forward with the proposal, would be to fund or to propose the full amount to CPC with the explicit understanding that grant funding would be sought for 50%, and they could even condition their recommendation on receipt of grant funds. But that's how similar grants have been handled, like the historic property surveys, where the historical commission's been successful in getting grants for 50%. They've proposed the full 25,000 to town meeting, and then they get the grant, and then they actually expend, the town expends the full 25, but we get reimbursed the 12.5. So
Angus, if it's done that way, are we able to put money back into?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it goes back into
So
the
it doesn't
bucket
just go
that
to
it's
free
supposed to.
cash. It doesn't just
Correct.
go.
No, it goes back into CPC and it goes back into the bucket that it came out of.
Okay, great.
And in this, the second part of Glenn's question was, would the town be faced with getting $1 million project cost? Well, to follow Brad's line of thought, this would go to a more open-ended public visioning session. And once the architect is given a direction on what the town wants to see developed here, that part of the project cost is 50% construction drawings. So at that point, we'd have a pretty good idea on what that's going to cost. And either we go forward or we step back away and do some redesign.
The overall intent, I think, on our part is to get us to 50%, understand what the cost could be. And then there are 2 other grant programs the town could apply for, both from EEA at the state, the Land and Water Conservation Fund program, as well as the Park program, PARC. And projects like this would score very, very well, simply because they align so well with the state's open space and recreation plan, which really is all about waterfront trails and access to water. Trails in general score very highly, and then trails designed for all access will score well as well.
I had a question. Have you guys run this by Greenbelt for their input?
Yes, I have. I recently sent a memo to Dave Rimmer, who I think had been in contact with Ryan last year or the year before, and have not heard back from them. But it would be a condition of the grant application that we had buy-in and support from all stakeholders. So that would be required.
Yeah, and Mike, to weigh in, in past conversations that we've had with Dave, I would be quite surprised if he was not in support of this in improving accessibility, for visitors to Mill Pond area. And this is in keeping with this, with all of the tenets of the conservation restriction as well.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made that we don't need the approval because there's some general authority to use create access ways and the like, but it'd be nice to make sure that everybody's on board and moving in the same direction.
Yeah, we all agree.
And yeah, Mike, I actually had a similar question, which is whether one of the design parameters would be that any proposed improvements would be consistent with the CR. And it sounds like the intent would be that it would be. Is that correct, Brad?
Yeah, that's correct. Do you hear me, Angus? Yeah, yes. The answer from our committee.
Okay. I'd make it sounds like a great idea. I would make a motion to support this grant application.
Well, second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Archie, can I ask
Yeah, go ahead.
a real quick question to Ryan? Hey, Ryan, Glenn,
Yes.
can we have something on a future agenda about the maintenance of the feed, the stream or that comes into Mill Pond? We'll have can you email me?
That would be the Indian River, right?
Yeah, email me on that. It just seems to be, I've asked that question like a year ago or something like that, or less than that. And I just want to make sure that's happening. There is some supposedly a management plan on that, and I don't think anybody really understands it. And we spend so much money dredging that. I just want to make sure that's in place. Or I don't know. I would love that to be on a future agenda for the selectmen and the Mill Pond Committee to be able to reach out and make sure that's happening, to make sure that Mill Pond is being fed properly and that management plan is in place. So whatever.
Yeah,
Just keep it in the
definitely.
back,
And
keep
would
it in the
be,
back of your head.
yeah, no, definitely. And if the Board of Selectmen are interested, we'd be happy to support, a Saturday morning walkthrough where we can kind of take a look at where so the Mill Pond is fed by two main streams. You have the Indian River and the Sawmill Brook stream that converge a little bit west of Stewart Street. In the area over by the power lines. They converge in that kind of swamp area, and that swamp area feeds into Mill Pond. But happy to kind of to walk that with you. And there's actually some developer plans up in that area that are attempting to move forward as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Glenn, the dredging study and all of that, we do have all of that on file, and had some conversation with the Mill Pond Committee, not this past summer, the summer before, when there was the issue of the blue-green algae. So that's a great thing to make sure that everyone knows about, and that, DPW is doing what they need to do on that. So.
Yep. There's things on my checklist. I only have like 6 months, 4 months left. And that was one of them that I wanted to make sure that was being taken care of. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Glenn, I didn't understand the question. So Angus, can you put that down?
So the town spent a lot on dredging a while back, and that, there was some continuing obligation or continuing O&M that needs to happen. So I think Glenn wants to make sure that's.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we spent a ton of money. Remember where the proposed dog park was supposed to be? That's all the dredge material that we took out of the Mill Pond because the Mill Pond became too shallow and it just wasn't a pond much anymore, and algae and growth was taking over. So we spent a ton of money to dredge that pond. We put it up. If you're going up that access road that you were talking to Patricia about on the left-hand side, where the main parking is on the right-hand side, all that stuff is right there. So there were part of that dredging was their management plan was making sure that we feed the pond properly and we make sure that the stream that's feeding that is well maintained and it's like whatever. And I as a selectman, I've always asked for it and I've never seen it, and I want to make sure that it's happening. And it's just one of those things that's in the back of my head. We spent all that money. I just want to make sure that we're feeding the pond properly. That's it.
All right, well, let's, Angus, put that down for something to do. Yeah, okay.
I got it. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
We're
Yeah,
good.
thanks very much.
Thanks, Patricia.
Thanks, Frank.
It's great. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Next item is the Historical Commission regarding the Alms House Cemetery. So, Bob, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, we'd like to. What we'd like to do is, very few people know that the Poorhouse Cemetery or the Alms House Cemetery is even there. As a matter of fact, it took me a while to find it. What we'd like to do really is, number one, is clean it up. It's pretty well overgrown. There are some dead trees that are in it and all this other kind of stuff. We'd like to clean it up, but we're going to need the highways help in some respects. To cut the brush, well, not so much to cut the brush, because I can do that. It's just hauling it off and, putting it someplace besides throwing it over the stone wall into somebody else's property or town property. And then maybe with the highways help or something once a year, maybe in the spring, we can go in there and just make sure it's all clean and it's, it's kept up. And we'd like to erect another historic marker up there. We have money in our budget to do that. outside of that, I think Elisa Grammer sent you quite a few slide presentations on some of the stuff that we've found about the cemetery and stuff. And we just think it's worth, making sure it's preserved. And we'd probably like to put a historic preservation restriction on that piece of property also, to make sure that it never gets rebuilt or somebody built on or dug up or something, because we're not exactly sure how many people are buried there, but it looks like there's someplace between at least 5 and 12 that we're not sure. So that's kind of where we're at.
Can you, how do you know exactly where it is? Can you see any stones or anything?
No. Some people have, there's been a couple of people, and I can't remember who it was at this point, that told me they had found a couple of gravestones in there. I have never seen any. Sue Formsby had done some work out there. She hasn't found any. My feeling is that where they were paupers, if you will, and pretty much the care of the town. Back then, when they passed away, the town just kind of probably, dug a hole and put them in it, and that was pretty much it. I don't honestly believe that there's any real markers out there. There may be, but I'm not sure. So
I do have, I have the slides if you want, Archie, if Elisa is on. Do you want her to run through the presentation?
Sure.
Because I can do a screen share. Elisa, are you there?
I'm here.
Great. Okay, so I'll put the screens, and then we can, okay, here we go.
So we're very clear that this cemetery exists. And if you go to the next slide, it is discussed in Susan Collinsby's book. We know it's along Poorhouse Lane. We know that it's marked, and this makes a big clue as to where it is. There's an outline of stone walls along where the cemetery is. It's not that big. And unfortunately, we have very, very few records about it. She identified 5 burials. Can we go to the next slide? So we did more research and came up with at least 12 people who were likely buried there. Again, there are almost no records, and the West Newbury vital records, while available, are very obscure as to the people who actually might have been buried there. One of the clues is if they died there and they're not buried anyplace else, you have a good idea that they were buried there.
In honoring those lives.
Going to the next slide. So I found one plan in Salem deeds that showed the cemetery. This is a 1909 plan, and the information indicates that the cemetery is right at the corner of the town forest and what is now the Mill Pond area.
So for the future, brought home by President-elect Biden and Vice
So can we go to the next slide?
For many months, we have
if you look at what it looks like right now, it's sort of undifferentiated woods with a ton of brush around it. There's not a lot of indication of any kind of, we did look, as Bob said, for stones and whatnot, couldn't find anything. And frankly, I do believe there are people buried there, but you'd have no idea from what you'd see there. And it's sort of a mess, and it's pretty much impassable. Next slide. So there is a statute that says that if you have an ancient burial ground, which this seems to be, there's an obligation to preserve it and to use it for no other purpose than as the burial ground. And there are other statutes that talk about cemeteries with 10 people or more buried there that the town can assume responsibility for. So it seems like we should be taking care of this. Next slide.
Hey, Elisa.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Ryan Goodwin from Mill Pond. If you could go back to that last slide.
Yeah.
You know, not to split hairs here, but it looks that ancient burial ground is defined as remains of American Indians, not in terms of the list of names that you had referenced earlier. Just
Well, it's any tract of land which has been for more than 100 years used as a burial place.
Okay.
So by our estimation, it's again right at that corner by the town forest and the Mill Pond area. And Bob has done probably a better job with GPS of trying to identify that outlined stone wall. But we don't have a big idea of where it is, but that is pretty much what you're looking at.
It's, if you just don't mind for just a second, probably
Yeah.
right under the A, right where the A is in Allen's House Cemetery, right there is where the cemetery is. It's right in that one little corner.
And Bob, that coincides with that 1909 plan as to where it would be.
Yeah, I think I'm 99% sure that's where it is.
Yeah, I think so. So Elisa, this is Ryan again. So I received your email November 20th that you sent it over to Polly. So it took a week or so to kind of make its way to me. You know, so after receiving that email, you know, I went and took a look. I actually enter Mill Pond often off of Poorhouse Lane and off of Archelaus Place. And
Yep.
so I believe it's right. If Bob, if you could verify, I believe what I saw with the rock walls and that brush area is as you come up Poorhouse Lane, you crest at the very crest of the hill, and to that right there is where I believe that the
I think so. It's a small, it's surrounded on four sides by a small, stone wall. It's not very large, but it's that one little corner.
And Elisa, I'm in arrears on bringing you up to speed. We did approach this in the meeting minutes posted for our last Mill Pond Committee meeting in December at taking a look at this. However, with the impending storm that was coming, we realized that wasn't going to be possible at that time. And so we tabled this until March discussion to revisit to see how we could assist in helping clear that brush area or maintaining it or working with Wayne, et cetera. On this.
So that would be fantastic. And I would also say that if you look at the conservation restriction, the Mill Pond Committee is one of the approvers of a sign in the area. So the Mill Pond Committee input, I think, would be very valuable, no question.
Bob or Lisa, do you think you could find, like any interested volunteers, somebody that does, somebody that could use like a ground sensing radar or something like that to go over the area? Have you thought of doing anything like that?
I've thought of it, but I don't know what the cost would be to do something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there'd be some hobbyist that would, somebody somebody that instead of using a metal detector uses that for fun. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I don't know. There may be.
Does anyone have a backhoe?
Oh, please.
Well, I'm not sure about that. So to bring, this all sounds intriguing. It all sounds like something I would support. why are you here? So what are we supporting? What are you asking us, I guess, would be the best question.
These are the requests.
As if on cue, here is the list of requests.
Right there.
Go ahead, Elisa.
So it pretty much speaks to itself. We'd like permission to erect the sign. We'd like to have the brush and fallen trees cleared out. And I know the Historical Commission is not exactly a bunch of lumberjacks, but we would be happy to help. And I agree with Bob that the big thing is just hauling the stuff into an appropriate place. We'd like to have reference to and maps of the cemetery so that future people don't use a backhoe or put a concrete pad in a picnic area there. And then also the conservation restriction makes absolutely no mention of this. And it seems appropriate that it does. And I believe that that is under consideration for amendment in any event. So those were our ideas. And Bob, you may have something additional. I don't know.
I mean, I'm willing to go out there. I mean, I have a chainsaw and it's relatively strong back, and I don't mind cutting it up, the stuff. It's just, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to throw all the brush over and.
So I make a motion that we would grant all the recommendations and requests that are outlined tonight, and then have Bob and Elise work with Wayne in eliminating all the brush that's needed in the best way and simplest way for the town.
And just to be clear, we can I just add, we have talked with Wayne about this, and obviously we don't want to burden him a lot. And the thought is a one-time sort of semi-bid cleanup, and then maybe once a year or twice a year, just looking for stuff that needs to be done. Not a big deal.
I think this is an easy fix as long as, like Bob, everybody works together. It's all cleaned up. They come down there with one time, loads it up, it's gone.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to do. That's what we'd like to do.
But then that would be my motion, and you guys work with Wayne, and Wayne can schedule it, in a proper time, probably in springtime, before things start to grow again, and
Yeah.
so on.
Okay.
But thank you for finding this. This is interesting. But after we take the vote, I have another statement or question.
Okay.
Was there ever a second?
I haven't heard one.
Sorry, I was muted. I seconded about 5 times.
Further discussion. There's no ghost there, right, Bob?
We only
Not
hope
that
for
I've
it.
seen.
Okay.
Bob's going up there with a big vacuum cleaner on his back, though, just in case.
But I think, so I don't think the Mill Pond Committee would object to having any, issue with the historic markers coming in. We've already talked about what we can do to assist Elisa in terms of, clearing the brush on a Saturday morning. I think this is a great project to pull the Boy Scouts into. And in fact, it could even be an Eagle Scout project, to delineate the clean out in and around the rock walls and delineate it out. I think that bullet point 3 is a big ask. I think that, I think that getting this, amending the conservation restrictions going, is a ton of work, and not something that we'd really want to kind of take on here. I think, Angus and I have been.
Well, the pond.
Somebody's breaking up there.
You guys, Mill Pond doesn't want to take that on because Mill Pond doesn't want to take that on. But if there's other people who want to take on that big take, you have no.
No, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. No, I mean, no. And we are, in fact, actually in a kind of running a project in parallel right now for potential new trail markers in and around where we would be updating the trail maps. And guys, we'd have no problem, obviously, having this carved out onto the new maps as well.
Good.
Okay, all in favor?
Call the vote.
Aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
So Bob, this brings up a bigger thing about cemeteries. Has been my pet peeve forever.
Okay,
Are you
you're breaking up, Glenn.
part of any of the other cemeteries?
Glenn, you're breaking up. I can't understand you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know I am. That's my Wi-Fi in the house.
Oh. So go ahead, just,
It must be everybody's been on it tonight.
Glenn, we're not getting it.
Yeah, we've lost you, Glenn.
Yeah.
I think the spirits are from the cemetery.
I think we disturbed somebody.
That's right. They heard there were changes.
Can anybody hear me?
No,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Not now. I don't know if you're talking or not, Glenn.
Okay, let's move on for.
he can always catch me and ask the question.
Move on.
No problem.
Yeah, he texted me. He said they'll talk later. He'll follow
Okay.
up with you offline.
All right. Okay, good night. Thank you.
You.
Our next item is the date for the annual town meeting this spring, and picking a date to pick for closing of the warrants. So Angus, you wanna go ahead?
I do have some recommendations for you on that, and happy to go through that now. I do see we have some people on the line who I believe are here for different issues. So I don't know, do you want to stick with the agenda, or do you want to take things out of order with the, for instance, some of the, I believe we have people on with the CPC proponents. I think that's why some of the people are on.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, we can do this.
But I'm not sure. You know, like I see Ryan, I assumed he was here for maybe that, but maybe not. So.
No, I would say that's fine. Let's move on to item F for the.
Okay, so are there people on the line who want to speak to anticipated or known town meeting warrant articles?
Angus, I don't have specifics on it. There will be, I think I mentioned previously, you know, there will be an article requesting funds for a
Yep.
To work on the invasives issue.
Yep. Yeah, I've got that on my list. So I have a list on that. So, okay, I don't want to take that out of order if there's not people waiting to talk about it. So, so we can stick with the schedule. So in terms of the town meeting date, I've recommended to the board that under their authority under statute, normally the town bylaws would prescribe that the town meeting take place on the final Monday in April. But we know today that COVID will still be with us to some extent at that point. So I've recommended that we look at a Saturday town meeting. And I've recommended the date of Saturday, May 22nd, with the idea that if we make that decision sooner than later, it allows everybody to plan accordingly. And then working backward from that, I do have some recommendations on date for presentation of budget, date for closing of warrant article, warrant for articles. Do you want me to walk through that, Archie?
Go ahead, just go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Did you have to touch that to get into the meeting?
I have not yet circulated to the deadline for departments to get me their budgets. So I'd like to set a deadline of February 10th, which is basically 3 weeks from tomorrow. which I think is, just enough time. It's not a whole lot of time, but it's hopefully just enough time. I know there are some boards who've already been reviewing their budgets with the idea that I would, let's see, so February 10th, and then I would have my budget that I would present to the board at your March 1st meeting, which is later than it normally would be. But again, this all is predicated on extending the town meeting date to May 22nd. I would recommend a date for warrant closing of Friday, February 12th, which then the selectmen, when you meet at your regularly scheduled meeting on February 16th, you would then have all of the articles before you and you would decide what's on the warrant. So the budget presentation would be March 1st. The FinCom meetings would take place in March and the first part of April. The deadline with a May 22nd town meeting date, the deadline to post the warrants would be May 7th.
Angus, a question about the February 16th meeting. I thought we had talked when we looked at the first few months worth of selectmen's meetings for this year, and we looked at February 16th, and because that is school vacation week and it's the day after President's Day, I thought we had talked about changing that meeting, but maybe my memory is wrong.
No, I remember that being mentioned, but I don't remember. That's what I have until it's officially changed. So Rick, I got a lot on my plate. So
yeah.
It's, you could change that meeting date tonight, but that was talked about, but it wasn't made official. So.
Okay.
But yeah, if you want to postpone that meeting, you could push it to the 22nd. The issue on the closing of the warrant, Mike can speak to this, is the board can set a date by which article requests need to be received, but the warrant doesn't actually close until the board is convened and votes to close the warrant. So, that's where typically we set a deadline that's a couple of days ahead of a scheduled board meeting. So that, we say it's our expectation that it be received by that date, but until the board votes to close the warrant, for instance, if there was, let's say, a petition article, it could be filed that day and the warrant hasn't closed yet. So I was looking for a warrant closing date that was on a date of a regularly scheduled meeting, and then to set a submittal deadline of the prior Friday. So if the board did, reschedule the February 16th meeting, let's say to February 22nd, you could look at Friday the 19th as a deadline for submittal.
Yeah. Actually, I should probably not even. I'll withdraw that comment. I can work with the 16th because we're all remote. So even if we've managed to figure out how to go somewhere.
Well, I don't like the fact that we do something Friday that you have organized. Freaking phone.
Heck.
Len, it kind of sounds like a harpsichord.
Well, I'm going to a different part of my house.
Well, now it sounds great.
That came through real clear, Glenn.
My only comment is, are you sure you want to push out the date for departmental budget submissions to you? Because the sooner you get them, the sooner you can start putting the number.
So the date,
that's like making your life harder.
Well, so when I said February 10th, I was actually thinking what I did last year is I had the date for departmental budgets due a week ahead of boards and committees, just to acknowledge that boards and committees, need to review things in a public meeting and need to refer out their budget. Departments don't have the same, procedural delay. So when I say February 10th, I would say it would be February 3rd for departments, February 10th for boards and committees. That way, fills my pipeline. And the fact is, I've actually already gotten some budgets, including.
Oh, okay, so that's better.
Yeah, like the
That's better.
DPW director sent me his budget last week, so I already have things to start filling the pipeline. So spacing it out is actually, but I'm glad you raised that because that's important to clarify.
Okay. So I personally don't have a problem with any of those dates.
And Rick, I don't think it would be, I literally didn't intend to, ignore the comment about February 16th. That, the board could change that. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah.
It's just not something that was, when I put it in my calendar, until it changes, it's still in my calendar, and it didn't ever change. So, but you could change it, and I don't think there'd be a problem with February 22nd. Because a lot of the, articles, if they're not already known to us, are going to be, it's not like we tend to get things right at the last minute. Usually people at least let us know where they're going well ahead of that.
Yeah. No, why don't we just stay with what you had planned, and I'll if I need to make that work, I'll make it work.
So I tried to say in the other room, but now I think I have better Wi-Fi in this part of my house, is that you seem like you have your deadlines to the articles on a Friday, and then we have a meeting on a Monday. Is that true?
Yeah, correct.
So, but isn't that too close for you to try to turn it around for us on a weekend and give us proper information on a Monday for us to discuss? Is it better for you to have that a couple of days beforehand, so then you can organize it and make sure that we get it, so you're not working through the weekend and all that kind of stuff, and then you're asking us to make recommendations and or comments or stuff on a Monday?
That's a great point, Glenn. So we could do one of two things. We could either hold the line on February 12th and then have the meeting the 22nd. So there's more time in between, or if we stuck with the meeting on the 16th, the articles could be due the prior Monday, the 8th, or even the Friday before that, the 5th.
I think the 12th and the 22nd, just because it gives you time to process. Yeah, I don't want you to be processing things over a weekend and then,
and then you get things at the last minute, which isn't fair to you.
And then we have to review. But I mean, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think you hold the line on the date, but then we review on the 22nd, and that gives you plenty of time. Maybe those things aren't even complete and you don't want to throw them out, but you need to get more information, but it's on a Friday and you can't get it, and we can't, you know what I'm trying to say?
That's no, you're absolutely right.
Agreed.
So that would be my only comment about that schedule.
Well, let's run with that then, the 12th and the 22nd.
I like that, and that works with. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing's predicated on the May 22nd, because that really gives us an extra nearly 4 work weeks, which we can really use at this point, as you know.
Okay, that's good.
So if that's agreeable, I'll go ahead and write that all up and circulate that either tomorrow, if not later tonight, just to get the word out to people on.
So do we have to vote officially vote on the town meeting date? I think we do.
Yes. Yep. The town, by the vote of its board of selectmen, may delay the.
Can I ask you a question about that? We've always had Casey involved in this in the past, just because it was a special town meeting, Mike, and not an annual, and that's run by the selectmen. Do you know what I mean by that?
No,
Mike McCarron?
This is the power for the annual town meeting. You can always, the Board of Selectmen always select what day they want for a special town meeting. That's their purview. But for the annual, set by the town bylaws, but the statute gives you the authority to change it. And you don't have to vote tonight. I mean, theoretically, if you could say, well, we'll plan it, you can make the vote anytime, prior to your putting, signing and posting the warrant. So, I mean, you could vote tonight if you want, but I mean, certainly it's, you got a lot of time.
Yeah, I think it's
And-
important to vote tonight, just so everybody understands when it is and when it isn't.
And I know the board knows this, but just so everyone knows, I did talk to the moderator back on January 7th about the May 22nd date, and she agreed that date makes a lot of sense given COVID. And obviously there's not going to be we know town meeting's going to be outdoors, and there's obviously not going to be an outdoor town meeting on a Monday night. So that kind of brings you to a Saturday, and then something a little bit later in the season where hopefully the weather's more likely to be good.
No snowstorms on that day. Hopefully not.
Okay, I'd make a motion to set aside Saturday, May 22nd for the annual and special spring town meeting.
Second.
Time to be determined later.
Second.
All in
Kemper,
favor?
aye.
Archibald, aye.
Parker, aye.
Great. Thank you. And unless there's objections, we'll go ahead and reschedule that normal February 16th meeting to Monday, February 22nd.
Okay. Okay, item B. Angus, what do you want to talk about there?
Well, I see, obviously we've got Mike Walters on the line. We know he's here for the Moulton Street issue. I don't know if the others on the line are here for particular reasons or just here to listen, but the next thing on the agenda is known and anticipated warrant articles. I do have a list. I see Ms. Culbertson, I believe, raised her hand.
I'm here for G, Moulton Street too.
Okay.
If you can hear me.
Okay. So unless the other selectmen object, let's skip down to item G, discussion regarding parking on Moulton Street. I was unable to attend the walk around with the DPW director and so forth. Rick, do you want to just summarize what happened there, or?
Yeah, we took a look at, the street parking that was currently being used, or that is being used. I actually had taken a walk around the reservoir beforehand, parked over in the far spot over near the old Cherry Hill land, and walked clockwise around the reservoir, just to see if that was really a viable route, as Mr. Walters had suggested. It actually appears to cross through somebody's backyard, and is very wet and muddy in places, and is pretty narrow. So I don't think that's a viable way to direct people around the reservoir, to try to change people's habits. We talked about, other alternatives, trying to come up with other alternatives, and in the immediate vicinity, there's, maybe 100 yards away or so, there's a spot where probably half a dozen cars can fit, and it's used regularly already. Are
you talking about on the other side of the street?
Yeah, on the other side of the street, over by the bottom of Ilsey Hill Road.
Okay.
But that holds maybe half a dozen cars, and which clearly doesn't match the demand or the use that there currently is. and talked about a little bit about signage. There are a series of boulders lined up along the roadway. Large stones or small boulders, depending upon how you look at them, lined up alongside of the roadway across the street from the reservoir.
Correct.
I quite honestly was a little concerned about those just because I think they are in the town right away. I don't know exactly where the right of way is, but it seemed fairly likely that they are within the town right of way. And I guess I wonder what, if any, liability the town has for those boulders lined up in the right of way if somebody hits them. They're there to prevent people from parking on that side of the road, which seems like a good idea. Talking with the police chief, he agreed that having cars parked on both sides of the road would not be a good thing, because it would narrow it down, less than 2 lanes wide.
Yeah, I wonder how far in the right of way goes into where those reeds are and into the swale next to, on the opposite side of the road from the reservoir. I don't know how far in the town's right of way goes there.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm sure somewhere there's probably a road layout that shows that, but I don't know where that is.
I have a little bit of information on that. Directly in front of my lot at 97, between the hot top and the start of my lot is approximately 11 feet.
So a substantial amount.
Fairly, yeah, 11 feet.
Sounds
What,
good.
did Wayne
All
make
right
any
of ways
comments
start like in the middle of the street.
Yeah, that's generally where you assume they are. It's possible the street has drifted a little bit from where the right of way really is. I mean, much of town where there are stone walls that exist, I think the rule of thumb has always been assuming that the right of way goes from stone wall to stone wall, but that's a rough rule of thumb.
Yeah, that's never the case.
From state planning board, generally it was assumed that the town right away, and this was also from talking with Gary Bill, way back, that the right of way typically on most streets in town was 50 feet, plus or minus 50 feet wide.
So what just to try to bring this to some type of better discussion, thanks for the information, Ray. What do we hear? Why is this on the agenda? It's kind of rhetorical questions, just so Archie, so we can just get to some type of discussion.
Right.
Do you want me to jump in here, Archie, or
No, well,
leave it to you?
just to answer Glenn's question, I wanted to know what we had a fact-finding mission, you might call it, last week to see what the DPW director and others and Mr. Walters and what other people thought when they were there. Was there any mention, Rick, of pushing getting rid of those stones and allowing people to park there rather than right at the gate?
No, there wasn't any. You mean switching them to the other side of the road?
Right.
Switching. There wasn't discussion of that. In fact, the discussion was more along the lines of how to continue to prevent people from parking on the side of the road with that has the boulders, without putting something unsightly up that signs up that would be offensive, new signs that would be offensive to the view. But there really wasn't any discussion of moving parking to the other side of the road. And from the perspective of Mr. Walter's property, I'm not sure if that would really improve things.
No, but it might, if we could bring the vehicles a little bit, bring more parking by the Ilsley Hill road intersection on that side of the street, take a few of those stones away, and then we could have 8 or 10 cars parking, and they're all pretty much blocked by the phragmites. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation.
Because there is, say, half a dozen space worth of area there now. And the other thing is it is Mr. Walters made a good point, is we don't necessarily want vehicles dripping oil or whatever right into the reservoir. If at least it's across the street, and it would have to be filtered through 30 feet of earth underneath the road before it got to the it seems like at least parking on the Ilsley hillside is out of the field of vision somewhat, and it's slightly less close to the drinking water supply. I don't know, that's just my thinking. We could have more, get rid of some of those stones, and we could have more parking, a little bit further up from the gate. And I don't know. That's just my thought. And that is not as opposed to parking further up on around the other area where the people fish. That is too far. I don't think people are going to park there and walk down along towards the pumping station from there. And that's I go there a lot because it's on my running route. But you have to be careful going around. Someone that has a stroller or a dog, it's not desirable to be walking along the guardrail all the way from the other small parking area. So I don't think that's a viable option. But this is relatively, I don't know what this would be, 50, 60 yards from the entrance to where the gate is. Isn't that far. So that's all. That's my only comment.
I guess it would be interesting to see how many spaces. I mean, currently, Wayne and I took a look at it and measured, did a sort of a rough measurement, and came up with 6 cars could be fit in there currently. That's assuming that people park in a reasonable fashion and are not wasteful of space the way they park. But the question is, how many more spaces could you add there? This is an area that people have been using for years, at least for, I can vouch for them using it for at least 25 years. Obviously there's more pressure on it now, almost certainly because of COVID. But it's an amenity that's existed for a long time, and I don't think we should be removing it from people's access. So
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I think
Yeah.
we make sure that there's ample parking for people to continue to use it.
Could I add a little bit of information? I've given the 3 selectmen quite a bit of information concerning this particular parking area. One thing I did yesterday was I started at 2:00 in the afternoon, and I went round to all the trails, trailheads throughout West Newbury, which was about 15 different trailheads. And of those 15 different trailheads, and I gave you the information, most of them had 0 cars parked there. And that would obviously be at the instant of time when I happen to arrive at that particular location. But the 3 locations that had the major parking of all the potential 15 locations was Mill Pond, Pipe Stave Hill, and the Indian Hill Reservoir. And the Indian Hill Reservoir actually had more cars parked there than at either Mill Pond or Pipe Stave Hill.
So, okay, so I'm going to be the devil's advocate, and so what's wrong with that? They're illegally parked, and they're abiding by the law, and they're walking their dogs or themselves or jogging. So, what's wrong with that?
Well, I've given the selectmen 4 different emails with various information. One of the first emails was related to public safety. If you can imagine, if you've got up to 12 cars parked along in the area that we're talking about, and I have got pictures that I've given the selectmen of children that are probably in the region of 3 to 4 years old, not being attended by their parents, that are standing on the side of the road waiting for their parents with trucks going by. So I would say, number 1, it's a public safety issue.
Cut down
Number
your fucking voice.
Number 2, the water pollution that is happening there. I have shown, I counted 73 separate pieces. I beg your pardon?
Somebody's not muting. I don't know who it is. This is Glenn Kemper, a selectman. So I don't know where it's coming from, but I do hear feedback. So if you're on the line and you're not muted, we can hear like conversations that are happening in your house that you might not be involved in with us. So it's very important that you mute yourself while you're not talking.
So after the public safety issue, number 2 would be water pollution. I did a little survey at the location, and on the 14th of January, I counted 73 separate items of trash within about 30 feet of the gate. And then I also walked down on the hot top area from the gate going into the reservoir area, and I counted 51 piles of dog feces. And then with having up to 12 cars parked there, and it's not 12 cars parked the whole day, it's 12 cars parked at any one particular time with people coming and going. So you've probably got in the region of maybe 60 to 70 cars over a weekend that are parking at that location, which are bringing in contaminants such as gasoline, antifreeze, oil, salt, various other contaminants on the tires. And then all that gets washed down, which was another set of pictures which I gave the selectmen, which shows, because it's right adjacent to the hill, the water. I took a picture, I took about four or six pictures on Saturday morning when we had the rainstorm, and there's just a river coming down that hill, flushing through everywhere where the cars have been parked from the previous days, flushing through where the trash is, and then going through and into the area where the dog feces are. And all that is going directly into the reservoir. So I don't think that's a good situation. Finally,
But hold on, let me address that for 1 second. So if we took care of all those situations right there, you wouldn't be opposed for cars parking there.
No, I'm saying that's part of the negative effects of the car being parked there.
Well, I understand that, but if we took care of all those negative effects, that we would be able to take care, that you would never be opposed to cars parking there.
No, the restatement of my issue, which I brought up in front of the selectmen, is the parking eyesore at that location.
Okay, so it's the
That's-
parking eyesore, and then you're backing up the parking eyesore by all this. I got it. Okay. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of, what we need to take care of. So if we took care of all the problems that you just stated, you still wouldn't want the parking there.
Correct.
Okay.
And your issue, Mr. Walters, is that it bothers your view, correct?
It's bothering my view, but there's also other issues which I'm just alluding to here because of this situation. I do think the area that you're talking about, which is 80 yards down the street, which if people are going for a walk, I don't think having to go an extra 80 yards is a problem. That I don't think would be negative as far as myself or any other of the neighbors. And I think it's an area that it's going to be hidden. And it could easily be used. It's being used now. There's people using that particular parking spot right now.
But do you think, with all your investigative stuff, do you think all those issues that you just brought up would be still happening, even though they just parked 80 yards down?
Well, as I've said, the number one issue is the parking eyesore. There are other issues because of the amount of parking that's happening there and the location, which I've just gone over. So it's an issue that's happening because it's in an area that isn't environmentally or pollution-wise a good area to have a parking spot. From a safety standpoint, it's not a good area because you've got if you've got a line of 12 cars coming along the road there, with kids coming in and out of the cars, with dogs coming in and out of the cars, and with also people who have just arrived, they're also entering onto a narrow street. So there's a lot of negative effects brought about by this. I'm not saying go down 80 yards. I'm saying that's certainly an alternative that would help the situation. But I'm saying that the parking eyesore that I have in front of my yard, which is 200 feet long. And when there's 12 cars parked there, they're lining up right along the reservoir there. And it completely spans and overflows either side of my lot. And I came to West Newbury, or I've lived in West Newbury for 40 years. And I live in the town because I love the rural beauty of it. So having 12 up to 12 cars parked in the bottom of my lot isn't something that I want, no.
Mr.
Well,
Walters,
it's not new either, is it?
so yeah, there's been parking there for at least 25.
Yeah.
And you built your house 18 months ago.
Right, but I have lived in town for 40 years, and I've ridden by that. The reason I chose that lot was because of the beauty of the lot. And I never used to ride by there, and there'd be 12 cars parked there. Now, I agree that I think with the COVID-19 situation, it's made it worse. But what I'm nervous about now is, now that people have discovered that area, that it may go down somewhat once the COVID situation has been resolved. But I don't think it's going to go down so that in the past, when I had driven down there, there was nobody there, or there's one car there.
So you're scared about people legally parking on the street and taking their dog for a walk. And then you're saying that you're nervous that you have irresponsible parents letting their kids walk into the street and unattended with their dogs, but that will all be fixed if we push them 80 yards down.
No, I'm saying.
No. I mean, that's what you said. You said that one of the concerns. One of the concerns you said was that we have irresponsible. That was my terms, not yours. Irresponsible parents that let kids wander by themselves into the street, and you're very concerned about their safety, and we need to take care of that. But that's all going to be fixed if we move them 80 yards down, not in front of your house. I find that amazing that parents will find their parenting skills a little bit better 80 yards down.
Well, just look at it from this standpoint then. As I've just mentioned, or I mentioned earlier on in the information, there's an approximately 11-foot right of way, or that the town owns, between the hot top and the start of my land, and I would also presume it's on my the same for my neighbor's land, which goes up to that parking area. So the parents, if they wanted to, could park their car in the area that we're talking about, and then they could walk down. It could even be marked if they wanted to. They could walk down on the grass verge 80 yards and cross the street and go into the general trail area.
Okay.
Can I ask
I would add that the police chief and the DPW director, and the DPW director is quite well versed in traffic flow and traffic safety, and that he actually felt that the additional traffic along the guardrail, slow vehicles coming down Moulton Street on the reservoir side, and he actually felt that it was not a safety issue, and that it actually the parked cars may actually slow
people down.
Yeah, so that's just what I'm not an expert on it. I'm just listening. I'm just repeating what the information we got from our DPW director and our police chief.
And Mr. Walters, one of our selectmen, Archie, has proposed a fine for anybody who leaves their dog waste over there. But we took that off our warrants at our last town meeting because we wanted to try to come. You'll have less articles because we're outside with COVID, but hopefully you'll support Archie's article this spring, and that anybody who leaves dog waste up on that reservoir will be fined.
I think that's going to be hard to enforce, but that's certainly a good thing by all means.
When I was out there last week with Angus and Wayne and Jeff Duran, one of the things we did talk about was putting in some form of signage that's a little bit better than what's there currently regarding animal waste, and we probably, if we do impose, or have a new fine structure, we probably want that to be, clearly displayed. And of course, we don't want to make the view any worse for Mr. Walters, but we probably want to make sure that that it's clear to people that that there can be a penalty for leaving dog waste out there.
So
I think Ryan had a comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so someone who as a citizen who utilizes and walks my dog in that area, and Mr. Walters cleans up his dog waste on a regular basis. And it was kind of to Archie's point, I guess, piggybacking on that. I mean, back, when I used to do traffic analysis studies as an engineer, one of the things that we would look at was statistical anomalies of accident rates, right? In terms of if we had an intersection that had a higher percentage rate of accidents, we would take a look at the accidents against the timing of those lights and say, okay, well, something might be off here. How can we potentially remedy, this situation or make it easier for drivers? In this case, I would ask the question as to, and this is point one, is there do we know that if there's a high incident of accidents or any altercations, that have had vehicular incidents that have happened on this area because of the parking? I'm not aware of any. And Archie, you said you spoke with Chief Duran. right? In terms of,
Rick spoke with him, but the chief did give us a report on that.
No, I talked to him too. No, Ryan, it's not.
yeah. And then the other incident, in terms of, do we have an incident report or complaints from reservoir management in terms of water quality?
No.
Right. So these are all good. So Mike, the things that you're bringing up seem to be a lot more kind of ancillary, maybe potentially even fictitious issues that you're creating, to kind of benefit, the argument that you don't want the people here. But in some ways, as even as a Mill Pond Committee chair, I want our areas open for all people, right? We want people access our beautiful land and environs. That's why we live here. This feels a little bit like I've built a house next to a farm and I don't like the cows anymore that are there making the noise and shitting all over the land. Excuse my French.
Well, I'll give you actually a better one. 11 years ago, I got a complaint from somebody on Bachelor Street that built a house that they were unhappy that we were playing baseball on Sundays on our Bachelor Street baseball fields. And I had to say I'm sorry, but you bought a house across the street from a baseball field. It's not like the town built a baseball field after you bought the house. And then I would, have some empathy and say, okay, listen, we need to have some, discussion about this. You bought a house across from a baseball field. You can't complain the kids are playing baseball. I've been a selectman for 15 years. We've had issues with parking down there in the sense that people just don't like it because they don't want people from New Hampshire. We don't want those kind down there. And they're just people just parking the car illegally, walking with their families and or their dogs or themselves. So, it's hard to, restrict people,
Debbie?
Yeah, hi. I'm the new kid on the block too. And so much of this sounds familiar to me. I'll tell you, I'm a Nantucket native. I'm pretty rare. There aren't many of us left. And we have access problems all the time, parking issues to conservation land and water access. And then I also have a place in Vermont, and my property, all of us are really keyed into keeping trails open to allowing people to go through. And one reason why I moved here is, to me, it's all about being able to walk and have access. And I have dogs. Those of you who walk by, you'll hear them. We've got puppies right now. And I walk there all the time with the dogs. And I want to say that I have found everybody parking there very courteous, very polite. I think that, I don't know what their policy might be, but I have seen semi-attractive disposal little cans for dog remnants, bags, just leaving them on the trail. Which I have something I pick up. And there's a small group compared to everybody else who cares about the trails. So, maybe there could be a little trash container down at the end by the gate, and see if that helps mitigate some of the problem. But, I've moved here knowing that there are people walking by my yard, and I look out across the reservoir and I see all the cars. I know they're there. I know they're there when I bought the land. And here come my puppies, my husband's Zoom meeting, and you get to meet one, maybe two. Sorry, guys. And so I just want to say, I think that from what I've observed over the last 18 months, it's working. And I'm sorry that across the way doesn't like the visual aspect of it, but the rest of it seems to work pretty well for me. And I'm pleased that everybody, from where I watch them parking, has been very, very conscientious. So, that's my.
Thank you for your perspective. That's good.
And everybody else.
One thing I would say, I spoke to the DPW director about this, and and we both agreed. Unfortunately, like what's happening at beaches and parks and whatever, the idea of putting trash cans become an attractive nuisance and they end up overflowing, or the whole idea of what you bring in, you take out is a way better trash management system than if we had a barrel it would need to be emptied daily, and it becomes a self-fulfilling nightmare. So people have to be responsible for their own trash. That the idea of putting a trash can is not a good idea.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I was just trying to help a little bit with trying to mitigate some of the issues
Right.
that fellows having, but I'm on your side with that. I believe that. Hack what so.
Archie, just one thing, I see we had Kathy Madden. She was on earlier and used the little hand raise icon and
okay.
dropped off, and now it's back on. So I didn't know if she was looking to speak.
Hi, Kathy. You want to talk?
No.
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
good. Not
Yeah.
like actually I'm very respective of what you're doing, and I think you're doing a great job of solving this problem. I have 4 dogs. I really respect the fact that people want to walk their dogs on that area, and I also feel like people should be very responsible for their own dogs. I have 4 dogs. I do not ever not scoop. I am out in the wild. There are geese, there are everything, deer, you name it. There's scat everywhere. But I scoop. I clean up after my dogs all the time. And, I just feel like this is a really great place for people to walk their animals, and it's awesome. And if everyone has respect and they clean up after their animals, it's good. But I will tell you that when I walk over there, the people are not cleaning up after their animals. I have never seen so much dog scat in my life. I mean, I don't walk my dogs there because there's so much stuff left. And I would really like to see more of that. I would also like to see a barrel down at the bottom of the hill where they're talking about a parking space, where the fishermen go, where there's a barrel there. And I would even be open to taking care of that barrel once a week when the people come through to pick it up. It's difficult. The people are dumping all kinds of trash. It's crazy. Like down where the fishermen go, there's like cardboard, all kinds of trash, crazy trash. That's disturbing to me. That's more disturbing to me than what we're doing here now. So, like, whatever. I'm sorry.
I agree with you. Actually, Kathy, I went for a run yesterday, and with the foliage down, I was sort of appalled how much trash there is on the sides of the roads. But that's for another day. But
It is. Yes.
I have to attest to that. Archie's been fighting for this for a while, so something's going to come of this, probably in this Brown meeting.
Great.
Okay, so anyone else like to?
Yeah, I'd just like to go back and count some counterpoints to some comments that were made. Number one, I have never said that I'm just doing this for the public safety or the water pollution. I said right from the beginning, my issue is the eyesore of the parking. I would challenge anybody, if it's not in front of their backyards, I would say to everybody else, how would you like to have 12 cars parked along the front of your lot? And when people are saying you've known this, I have lived in town for 40 years. I've gone past that place hundreds, if not thousands of times over 40 years. And there was never the kind of parking that is there now. So number one, how would other people like to have 12 cars parked in front of their lot? And it's not like there isn't alternatives that we could go to here. We're talking about just 80 yards up the street. What is the problem with people walking another 80 yards and resolving the situation amicably for all concerned?
Okay, anyone have any further comments? Does any?
No, Mr. Chairman, this is Glenn. I'd like
Yes.
to take this under advisement at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Mr. Walters, I haven't lived in this part of town for that long, but I've been here 4 or 5 years, and it does seem like there's way more traffic, way more cars there since COVID. And I'm not sure that won't go back to being what it was after things come back to the new normal. I mean, people are going to be everybody isn't going to be necessarily working remotely anymore, so there'll be less people will be able to be out and about walking, and people simply soon will have other things that they can actually do. People can't go shopping now. People can't go into Boston. They can't go to a show. Practically the only thing people can do is go out for a walk. And
Go,
or
baby, go,
walk their
go,
dogs or
go.
I think the numbers will go down
You talking to me?
when life goes back to normal.
I am hoping that you're right. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of the feeling that a lot of people now have discovered this area that hadn't known about it before. But let's just say it does go down, and it goes down to, let's say, on average, 6 cars at a particular point in time. Why couldn't we just move those 6 cars 80 yards down the road so it's not hurting anybody?
I'll join Debbie, and as a 4-year Nantucket resident, Mid Island as well. You live next to something beautiful, and people are going to come and enjoy it. As a Nantucket, you accept that July and August, you can't go. That the influx of people coming into the island is so great that you choose to go to the grocery store at 7 in the morning because there's really no other opportunity. And that the parking lots will be full of the hiking areas, and there's a natural ebb and flow to these things, and I think this is you've chosen a lot that it's in a pristine, beautiful area, and people, the parking was there when you purchased it, and I think that
No, it wasn't. That's not a correct statement.
Can I say something, please?
Yes, it is, because nobody's parking illegally. I think we need to move on. I can appreciate and I understand, Mr. Walters, your point, but I don't think there's going to be any new information right now that's going to change anything. So I think the most important thing right now is we'll take this under advisement. If there's if we feel that things have changed in the future, we'll make sure we put this on the agenda and we'll address it in the future.
So when you're saying you're taking under advisement, is a decision going to be made sometime in the not too distant future?
I think the decision at this point is they're inclined to make a
To
change.
make no decision. Yeah, there's no compelling information to change anything. There are no laws being broken. There's nothing that we can compelling information to to restrict people's movement because of you don't like the view or there's people that are in there. I'm sorry for that, but
I find it amazing when it's not like there isn't an alternative, and the alternative isn't far away. And the alternative is better when you look at all the issues concerned.
that you think that.
Well, can you tell me why it isn't a better place?
Maybe some people like to get right out of their car and get right on the trail as
Yeah.
opposed to walking along the road for 100 yards.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to tit for tat now. I think we showed the respect that Mr. Walter is due, and he is, and I'm glad that he brought this to us. We brought the DPW director out there. We brought our chief of police out there. We've all taken the time to listen and to go out there ourselves. I didn't go out there on the walk, but I did go out there and look around. Archie goes out there on his run. We have the information. There is no compelling information to change anything right now. But taking an advisement means if something happens, then we will. That's my thing. So we need to move on because
I agree, and I also think things will change. I mean, this is a year of everything being chaotic and different, and let's see what happens you happen to pick the year where walking is the only thing that people can do at the moment. So let's see what happens a little down the line.
I'm not trying to stop people walking.
I know that, but you're changing the channel. What they wouldn't be there if they weren't gonna. They don't just put their car there and sit there. They go for a walk. So, but they may not have time to do that when they're back to having to commute to Plymouth or something every day. People's lives have been changed in the past year, and they have. Walking is their only outlet at the moment. So they can't play basketball. There's a lot of things people can't do. So let's see what happens.
What if I look to get a petition and have people sign a petition that suggesting a different parking area?
Sir, you can do whatever you want to do, but I'm not going to change my mind with a petition or anything at this point. We have spent, all kidding aside, more time on this particular situation that we spent on the intersection of Crane Neck and Georgetown Road, which got people extremely hurt from accidents. So I feel very comfortable the amount of time that the selectmen have spent on this location for safety, for everything that you've brought up to us, to make sure that I could say we don't need a change because everybody's parking legally, and you're not happy because they're parking in front of your house. I wish I spent this much time on Crane Neck and Georgetown Road intersection, and a lot more people would be less hurt. And I know that's not proper English. So I'm done with this tonight. I understand your problem. I understand your concern, but enough is enough, honestly.
Agreed. Let's move on.
All right. So let's see. We talked, so going back to the budget schedule, we actually already kind of talked about that when we talked about the town meeting date and related timelines. So I think we've already covered item E. So now I think we're on to item F, which is the preliminary update on known anticipated potential town meeting warrant articles. So I'd hope to circulate something ahead of the meeting. I just didn't have time. I know the board's aware of everything we've got on our desk right now, so I know you understand that. But I do have a list that I can run through with you if you'd like.
Yeah, quick.
So we know water department's going to be proposing funding for the interior rehab of the pipe stave water tank. The Board of Assessors will propose the
Wait a minute. The pipe stave water.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been on the capital program for a while. It's going to be proposed for funding from water free cash. It's about $160,000. It's interior painting and maintenance. The assessors will be proposing the funding for the utility valuations under the fairly recent legislative change. we'll propose, as we always do, to transfer funds into OPEB stabilization and pension liability stabilization. We'll propose to transfer funds from school stabilization. I would say, maybe this is the year that we stop putting new funds into school stabilization and just look to draw from. I think maybe it gets a little confusing, but we can talk about that. But maybe we just, we continue to do it because of the initial kind of intent of that account or the philosophy behind it. But I think we could just draw funds from it this year.
If the voters want to have a tax, they don't seem to want to cut their taxes.
Well, the amount that we draw from it, that's a whole different matter that will be, we can put that on the next agenda, because it will be up to the Board of Selectmen to set what amount you're going to recommend from school stabilization. I have been corresponding with Pentucket on what we expect the new debt service will be in FY22 from the school. I don't have an answer yet, but we're corresponding on that.
So it won't just sort of be twice as much as last year?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I don't know if this will come together, but we do have staff are working on a stormwater bylaw. That is a condition of our MS4 EPA permit, is to get a bylaw done this fiscal year. We may or may not, we're not going to bring it forward if it's not ready. But the town planner and DPW, building and conservation are all working on that. And if we have something ready, we'll propose it. If we don't, we'll just document the progress that we've made and look to do that in a future cycle. But the stormwater bylaw is on the work plan. The building inspector is leading proposed amendments to the floodplain bylaw, which are partly to update the references because FEMA has updated the flood insurance rate map. So that's partly a housekeeping issue, but we will have, I expect we'll have a floodplain bylaw amendment. Dog waste bylaw, we had a good start on that last spring. So that would be our starting point this year, is to take that same draft that we had last spring.
I'd say a fine of $1 million.
Well, you've gone up a couple of orders of magnitude from last year.
10,000 is probably a pretty good deterrent, Archie. We will need to fund, propose, we could do a line item transfer, but I was going to, suggest maybe we propose, there is a shortfall in funding for Essex Ag of $3,300 roughly. That's because they didn't give us the transportation costs and the assessment. So that's the amount of transportation costs for the 2 students who attend there. So we can talk about what's the best way to address that, but it's a potential warrant article.
I mean, we don't have a choice. We have to pay it. Yeah.
We have to pay it. It's just a matter of, do we do a warrant article or do we do like
a transfer?
Transfer.
Yeah.
There's other ways. It's a fairly small amount of money in the scheme of things. So there's other ways to handle it.
I mean, it seems like it might, to Angus, not a trivial comment, I think. Why don't we do a reserve fund transfer now, because it was an unanticipated expense. We have to pay it. Then it's one less thing on the warrant.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think, yeah.
Get it dealt with. It's one more paragraph, one more motion that has to be made. We can,
Sounds good. I
good.
second
okay.
that.
All right. So those are, and I'm not going through, the routine articles that come up every year, but that's kind of my list of known. I also have a list of
skeptic revolving.
Yeah, right. In terms of potential articles, and actually, I'm going to go ahead and move that intern. Sorry, Rick, I've had that on my list of potential for a while. It's a known article. I know it.
No sweat. I'm not going to probe about it again.
It's on the list. Anyhow, so there is going to be proposed funding for the this is a combination initiative, I believe, of the MVP working group, but also something that's very much supported by the DPW director in my office. We know invasive species is a big problem. We know we don't really have the capacity to deal with it. So it's been suggested to see about funding, limited amount of funding, but to get, an intern or maybe two involved to help at least mapping and to do some field work this summer to help us get a good handle on where the invasives are. And so that I think would be a modest amount of funding, but it's something that is expected to be proposed. I don't know, Rick, if you want to elaborate. I'm just kind of going through these.
Yeah, no, that's good enough for now, Angus. Thanks. That's
okay. So some others under potential articles, free cash transfer to offset the tax rate. That's something we talked about, that if we're going to do it, we typically would wait till the fall, but there's been some sentiment in the past that if we're going to do it, maybe we should just do it in the spring. So everything's on the table. The Capital Improvements Committee is meeting tomorrow night, and one of the items they have on their work plan is that came out of a suggestion this winter is potentially proposing funding for a study of the Page School to look at the known and potential capital investments that will be needed over the years, and to look at, is there a tipping point at which, that may or may not be kind of the school of the future. We'll wait for the.
Didn't we just, are we still paying the $10 million or $12 million off?
Yes.
Yeah, we're nearing the end of that, I believe, but it's.
Yeah, but I thought we spent 12 million or whatever it was, so it would be the school of our future.
Well, right. I'm talking
not
future, not 5 or 10 years. I'm talking, long-term future.
So I'll be long gone. This is what I would ask: sell that, right, for condos, and go build another elementary school on the land on Chase Street on the Dunn property.
Yeah. So the CIC will be talking about
that was always
tomorrow. We've been doing some research on their behalf, but that's going to be up to them to bring that forward. I believe their intended funding source would be from stabilization. So they're working on that. Related to that, I've raised a question fairly recently with the CIC, and they'll talk about this tomorrow, of the capital improvement bylaw and potential revisions we might want to look at there. So I'll provide you more information on that, but I think
what's that about, Angus?
Well, so the question is actually, it was triggered by this proposal for the 160,000 for water free cash for the pipe stave tank. Traditionally, in the past, that would be part of what the CIC is looking at, but since it's not funded from stabilization, I've raised the question of, is that really, isn't the capital committee really kind of the gatekeeper of stabilization funds, not necessarily things, that's really a maintenance issue. It hits the definition of in the bylaw because it's more than useful life of longer than such and such and more than $20,000, but it's not. So I think, so I drafted some language that I think could clarify that the CIC is really looking at stabilization expenses and not every expense that's over that threshold. So we'll see what the committee thinks.
I think that's a good
But I think
idea.
it would be a useful clarification, because part of my concern, and look, I think there's next to no chance the CIC wouldn't favorably recommend that. I mean, they're certainly going to recommend it. The issue is it's more overhead, it's more meetings, it's more hoops to jump through, but it's also, what if they didn't? Could they veto the expenditure of water free cash? That doesn't seem right. So it's just trying to clarify. I think the bylaws, could be clarified. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. Obviously, you're aware, and I don't want to preempt the conversation because you might want to dig into some of these, but you have the 5 applications for eligibility before you that have been submitted to CPC. The CPC meets Thursday night, and they'll be just looking this week at the eligibility. They're not really getting into the substantive review yet. So there's potentially up to 5 CPC projects. That's the phase 3 of the Historic Commission property survey. It's the painting of the Old Town Hall. It's the proposed improvements to the trail, or the what's laid out with the Solvitz Court extension, what's being referred to as Whetstone Greenway. There's the Mill Ponds all access trail that was discussed earlier tonight. And finally, there's the proposed acquisition of the Coffin Street parcel that Greenbelt is sponsoring. And then I don't know, I haven't been told whether some of the articles from last spring that were passed over are going to be resubmitted. I did correspond with Brad Dorr, the chair of the Harbor Committee, a few weeks ago to see if they would intend to, if it's their intent to seek the funding that they proposed this fall. And I've suggested to him that, he ought to convene a meeting of the Harbor Committee to hear the phase 1 study that was delivered in August, but they haven't met since then. And to actually present that to the selectmen, so the selectmen kind of understand what they're looking at there with a potential mooring study of feasibility of a potential mooring field. So I don't know if that's, if they're going to propose that for funding, and if they do, whether the selectmen will put that on the warrant. But it's something that's floating around as a initiative. I also am aware that Concom is continuing its work on a potential wetlands bylaw. So I asked Bert a week or so ago, and his thought is the commission probably will propose a bylaw, but I don't know that.
That seems like something that one, because we would, I assume, would have a public hearing about that, or would that necessitate a public hearing?
No, they don't.
It'd be a non-zoning bylaw. It should have.
It's not really zoning. Okay.
Right. It's a non-zoning bylaw, but whether it is required or not, it's something that certainly should be well vetted because it's got big implications.
That's what. Yeah. Okay.
But Mike, with a general bylaw, there's not the same,
No, you're not required to have a public hearing for a non-zoning bylaw change.
Okay.
So that's what I've got in terms of known and potential. One other was on.
Can we go back on the paid school one?
Yep.
That's like, I'm sitting here, I'm very troubled with that. Where is that coming from?
I think it came out of a suggestion the chair made, Nathan Kelly made at the meeting. I think, was that in December, Rick, or November?
It was probably November.
Okay.
Yeah, and Glenn, it's really to try to understand just what are we really staring at long term. I mean, when the $10 million was borrowed, was that about almost 10 years ago now, probably?
A little less, but yeah.
It was known that was really scratching the surface.
Well, no, it was like, you want to spend nothing, you want to spend 10 million, or you want to spend 20 million.
Right. Or do you want to spend 50 million and build a new school? So
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Glenn, this was the we're gonna paint the 67 Corvair rather than letting it rust, but it wasn't.
But we did a little bit more than that.
No, I'm just making it, but it wasn't the full fix. We know that.
Okay. So there's a lot of people that feel that we're in pretty good shape with the paid school, especially with all the money we spent. So I'd hate, because any study can come out, or whatever this article plans to do, and rip apart, a 200-year-old or whatever the hell it is building. And there's so much
money has been put into it, but at what point does it become good money after bad? So that's what we have to look at. If you see another $20 million or whatever the number is, I'm not going to throw out it. If you see another large chunk of money and just ongoing, recurring expenses, and a building that is perhaps beyond its functional educational limit, at some point, you have to think, is there a better alternative?
Yep, I would agree with that. But all those things were presented to the town, and they said there isn't one, and that's the reason why we're spending $10 million with this one. But I understand, and I understand your point.
What I'll do, Glenn, and to the other, to Archie as well, because we put together, I corresponded with Nathan about a week ago because I'd heard this suggested, but didn't know if he'd kind of fleshed it out at all in terms of like dollar amount or scope, which obviously, as you know, we need to have a good idea of scope in order to have an idea of what it might cost. And, he didn't really have that. So I did put a feeler out to the, one of the listservs I'm on and put together kind of a little summary for the CIC packet for their meeting tomorrow night. So I'll forward that to you and Archie tonight. Rick has that because he's on the CIC. But
talk to Brad Dorr. He knows exactly what needs to be done to that building that wasn't done the first time.
Yep.
And talk to the people that actually use the building. Why don't we ask the principal what he thinks about what are the issues that people actually using the building have? We never do that.
No, and we're spending precedent amounts of money on a new playground. So everybody's thought is that we're going to be there for a while.
Yeah, but by the same token, I don't have any problem with spending a small amount of money to know what's going on. That's kind of preventive. That's like getting its annual physical. That's okay.
I agree, and that money's been spent. I would talk to Brad before we spent any more money, because he knows what needed to be done that we didn't do, and is going to come up in the future.
I will say that I think part of what this has come from is the progress that's been made on the capital program, because we have a much more detailed and much more complete capital program than we had 2 years ago, which is, Wayne has been a huge, he and I have both put in a huge amount of time on that, but he's really driven that, especially on the paid school and taking all this different information that was in different scattered places and putting it all in one place in the capital program. And I think that did have the effect with the capital committee of them looking at the enormity of that list and saying, wow. And then, so Nathan, the committee designated different members of the committee to kind of drill down in more detail on different subject areas within the capital program. And Nathan took the paid school one. So I know he did go through a site walk with Wayne and with the building, with Greg Haddon, and with the new facilities guy, and with Dustin. So they have, I think he's kind of responding to his sense that there's a lot of needs. So whether this is the right path or not remains to be seen, but that's what they're talking about, is proposing something like that.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of December 14th.
Second, Kemper.
Have a couple of, just actually one series that I mentioned this last time around. Jenny, I know you may be taking notes on this. On page 72 of the packet, which is, and item F in the minutes, it's just a sort of a reordering of some of the sentences. And there's a sentence that at the very end, there are two sentences that read, Alyssa Grammer stated that Nancy Powell has a lot of experience in this area. Nancy reported that there is a lot of enthusiasm and people want to help and want to change social norms. That block should be moved up 6 lines so that it follows the sentence that ends with invasive species management. Just keeping the thread going on, instead of mixing up topics. And then as it currently reads, right after where it says invasive species management, there's another sentence that says another benefit of this item would be reducing tipping fees. And that should instead now complete item F. It should read.
That should go after program.
Exactly, right, yeah. And that way, at least it makes sense.
I would amend my
Other
motion
than that, I'm good with them if you want to vote.
with the corrections as suggested by Mr. Parker.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Aye.
Parker, aye.
Great. Okay, the next item on the agenda is update in the Middle Street Bridge.
Okay, Angus, you have to do this like the way Chris Berman does it on Monday Night Football. You've got a minute to get through all of these items.
Okay, it goes to Concom locally on January 25th, and in Newburyport the following week, February 2nd. And there's been a flurry of federal permits submitted as well for the Middle Street Bridge, so that's going ahead. Item J, we learned recently we got the ADA self-evaluation transition plan grant. I think that's going to be really good. Building inspectors leading that work. Item K, we have made a lot of progress on the draft regulations for the inclusionary housing funds. So I did include a draft tonight. If you have comments, you can send them to me offline. But I expect that'll be back for board approval at the next meeting. We just want to make sure the planning board signs off on it before you vote it.
Angus, just a quick question on item J regarding the ADA.
Yep.
Is that also, that's looking at facilities, all facilities, including trails and things, or?
I've been corresponding with Sam on exactly that question. And whether it's all a matter of what the funds will cover and whether the vendor includes that. But I've sent Sam maps of all of the trails, and I've told him, there's not going to be, we know there's not going to be universal accessibility, but I'd like to take the opportunity to find whether there might be incremental improvements that we can at least build into our planning.
Okay.
So that's very much part of the objective, but it all depends what the consultant.
I mean, that seems like a job unto itself.
Right.
It's a matter of scope and budget, but also what I told Sam is even if the consultant can't devote the time to do that, we need to take this opportunity to at least advance the ball on that. So maybe he, as building inspector, he walks all the trails and makes his own, but I want to advance the ball on that issue.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So.
Yeah, and I just, as an aside, these two proposals for trails, the what's the one called? A Whetstone Greenway, is that it? And then the Mill Pond Trail. Those are huge steps in my mind. Those are huge steps in the right direction. In terms of accessibility.
Next item L.
Hold on, to go back on that.
Yep.
What's the Concom? There was money in the budget for this guy to be going around trails, assessing, whatever. Can that be piggybacked on anything? And how is he doing with that? And I mean, I asked for. I mean, I don't know if that's even possible. But I asked for kind of like an update on that.
Yeah, we got, the board had requested quarterly reports, and I did get a report in October from the first quarter of the fiscal year. And I did circulate that. It was in a lengthy packet, so it would have been easy to overlook, but I'll send that to you separately, Glenn. And
No, I saw it. I saw that, but
okay,
that was October. Now we're January.
So the second quarterly report, there's
It was just an opportunity to me to bring it up when we're talking about
Yeah.
trails
Yeah, I mean,
accessibility.
I think-
And he's supposed to be going around checking trail accessibility.
No, no, it's more of a conservation restriction, kind of documentation and.
Yeah, but he's going around okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I got it.
But no, the accessibility thing is that's a major focus of my office and,
Well, no, I understand, but I didn't mean that he's supposed to be doing that, but he's like going around in the trails and he was assessing things, no?
that's correct. Yeah, he's our
okay.
boots on the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we could, that's my point, that he
Yep.
could be kind of a eyes on the ground, boots on the ground type of guy that could maybe lend some information to our building inspector, what you mentioned, so we don't overlap work.
Mhm. The next item, updated financial policies, just informational, had circulated the timesheet policy that we updated a couple of weeks ago. And I've got with the new treasurer collector, we've got finance staff looking at clearing the backlog of the DLS policies and tackling those one or two at a time. And there's a couple that are, I think, coming close to the front burner. So the DLS policies, once we have those in a form that staff recommend, we would bring those to the board to vote, just as you have voted the policies, the I think 9 policies that we've approved so far. Next item, it was a follow-up from the prior one with the change in staff structure for the assessing department. I've been working with staff and have brought forward some changes to the assessing clerk job description to better reflect the responsibilities that position both has carried, but also now will be more on the front, somewhat more on the front lines with the assessor going to reduced hours. So the job description revisions are in front of you. I would request authorization to make a wage adjustment for the assessor clerk of 75 cents an hour for the current fiscal year.
And we're looking for a motion for that?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'd move that we increase the hourly rate by 75 cents an hour for the assistant assessor.
Assessor's clerk.
Assessor's clerk, excuse me, sorry.
Second, Kemper.
Further discussion, all in favor? Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Thank you. So that brings us, so that wasn't quite a minute, Archie, but that brings us to the follow-up meeting assignments and placing items for future agendas. One that came up tonight was the Mill Pond dredging and management.
Another one would be, we should talk about whether the MVP working group should be designated as a committee or should it remain its current ad hoc status?
What's the difference? And I'm not trying to even be funny. What's the difference?
Well, I mean, a committee would be, formed, designated by the
minutes and all that.
Yeah, and we already did everything, but it would.
That's my thing, Glenn, is they're already posting their meetings, they're already keeping minutes, they're already effectively, in my observation, complying with the open meeting law. So I feel like to not call it a committee is kind of like, well, why isn't it a committee? Especially where it's overseeing, public funds through the grant.
Got it.
I kind of think it should be a committee, in my opinion.
Got it.
Yeah, and the consensus is within the working group, maybe soon to be committee, is that we probably ought to be a committee. So, or it ought to be a committee now.
So let's put it on our next meeting. Make it a committee.
Okay.
Can we make it a committee right now?
Well, we'll need to appoint members, and
it's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
Got it.
But yeah, it's a housekeeping item. It's not a big deal thing.
We we have to address before we get back to normal and people playing lacrosse and flag football and all that. We haven't addressed the pipe stave, parking, sports, horse issues.
Can't kick that can any further, huh?
No.
Well, that's when we do address that, that needs to be a full-fledged addressee, as in alternatives, as in done land, as in restructuring, recycling. We got to stop playing games up there and take a bite out of the whole thing. So I don't know what type of money that is. I don't know if it's going to take a warrant article, but it's something that
Why can't we address it in two ways? We address it short term.
we have, though, Archie. We've addressed it.
And then go with the big picture.
I think short term it's addressed, that we have to make sure that riding and driving, pipe stave, all the sports groups and all those are working together. And if they're all working together and they're posting their activities
You saw what
properly,
happened- But Glenn, you saw what happened in September. If it
but that
hadn't-
wasn't working. That wasn't working together.
If it hadn't been COVID, there would have been like flag football, Super Bowl at the same time. The horse.
Yeah, but that's not working together.
I know.
That's my point. So we have to. So we have to get them to work them together.
I
That's
think
my
it
point.
makes sense. The earlier we do it, the better, because, we know right now that there's a significant conflict that occurs in September. And it would be great if we could figure out how to resolve this before.
Well, this is Mike. You still on the line? Mike
Oh,
McCarron?
yeah, Glenn. Yeah.
Okay, so the selectmen have control of a pipe stave of the fields. We give up that scheduling right or whatever to the youth leagues or whatever it is. So
Park and Rec
maybe
Commission.
No. that
Park
isn't
and Rec.
how it
I'm
works.
sorry, Park and Rec. Okay, Park and Rec. Park and Rec.
That
So
isn't
maybe
how it works.
okay, maybe we need to take that back then.
No.
So everybody
What it is-
works together.
What it is that the Park and Rec have control over the fields. Right now, the
We
management
give them
plan-
that control, though. They don't have that
Well, the
autonomously.
idea
We
is
give them
that
that control.
The idea is that the selectmen aren't supposed to be governor. They're supposed to be almost like the arbitrators. According to the management agreement, if the idea goes to the Board of Selectmen when they have to coordinate between the different groups. And the management group basically is that the different groups are supposed to run their programs, and then it goes to the Board of Selectmen when there's a conflict or there's something that needs to be decided. And the parking is that because there's conflict between the two groups. It isn't that the selectmen have control and they delegate.
Okay, I got
to the
it.
other
I got
groups.
it. So are we under our jurisdiction if we say it has not worked in the past, that we would like to be part of the
No,
scheduling?
you are like the judges. I mean, you.
Okay, so we have to
basically-
let it fail for then us to fix it?
No, it's just that the idea is that there's going to be some umpire. When
Okay,
there's
I got it.
conflict between the
So it hasn't worked. So can we be the umpire for this year and say, hey, listen, before, it's January now, so it's good to be the umpire before it happens, rather than when in the midst of it, and we need to make decisions like a week before. So can we say now, can we be the umpire in January or February and grab all the groups in and say, hey, listen, this is what the schedule is. And riding and driving has 2 dates in the year. You guys, there cannot be. Do you understand where I'm going with this? Can we do that now rather than us trying to deal with it in
Yeah, I mean, that's
the
how you've
fall?
done it in the
That's my
past.
point.
I mean, is it Glenn, you've been around a lot. I mean, so
I understand. I
Have you had the
understand.
times when your boards have had them in and the groups have told you, oh, we've worked it out, everyone's happy, we're all communicating, and then until they're not?
Yeah, I got that. I've been up there, standing up there with all of them, and then they told me everything, and then 2 months later, it was totally, different. But at least maybe if we can get all the groups in and we have, okay, we
Like,
don't even have to.
why can't-
We don't have to because you guys are all going to deal with this when I'm not a selectman. So I do care because it's my town, but I'm trying to prevent something. So there's
I don't see
what
why everything has to happen on one weekend. in
exactly.
September.
That's my point.
You
And they can't figure that out. So we have to figure it out for them.
I know it has to be said, okay, you get September 9th, you get September 17th, and no crossover.
Exactly. It seems like it's like a pissing a contest or something.
Yeah, well, the reason, Glenn, I think you're right in that we ought to deal with it now because they have long lead times for their tournament. They
exactly
that 6 months in advance, and it's built into community schedules, not just here, but in all the other participating communities. So, the sooner we deal with it, the better.
And that's a great point, Rick, because those were excuses that they could never change it in the past because there was so many different, tentacles out there with so many different communities. It was almost impossible to change it now a week before.
Yeah.
So basically, we'll try to do exactly what we did last winter because we had sent out the notice to everybody probably right around this time, inviting everyone into a meeting in February. And then the only reason that didn't happen or I think maybe it must have been March because it was COVID. And then that was the big night where everyone was going to come in. And then I think it was March 16th. And so then COVID came in and sideswiped everything. But that's exactly what we tried to do last season is get everyone in early enough. So I'll dust off the note we sent last year.
Yeah, but everybody has to come too with a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah.
If everybody can't come in that night and say we're having everything like Archie said on September 12th, and then we have to then try to work it out. That's not good. We have to come in with a little bit of flexibility, and like Rick said, we have plenty of time then to tell everybody we can't have everything on the same day. Okay, that was only my thing about that. And so that was my thing about pipe safe. And then what you said, Rick, and then the longer term of what we're going to do for the next 5, 10, 15 years, because obviously we need to do something.
So Angus, along the lines of the timing for it, as you noted, we had it scheduled for middle of March last year. If we could pull it into February, it's probably, the earlier we do it, the better. So
actually, I think if we went back and looked, I think it was scheduled for February and then it got postponed because I think we had some crises come up and it had to get postponed on short notice. And then it got postponed to March. So actually that was exactly the timeline we set last year.
Okay.
Was to get people in February. But as you know, things come up around here.
Well, 2021 is going to be a better year, I think. And so hopefully that'll work this time.
All right, so the second meeting in February, let's try and deal with that a little bit.
Right.
Okay, that'll be the 22nd. Good.
Anything more?
Oh, Rick, you're right. 2021 will be better starting tomorrow.
Right. I was going to say, if we can all hold on
tomorrow.
We can all hold on for 14 hours and 6 minutes.
I just saw a funny thing. It said that Trump is going to pardon the person that created the Cars for Kids commercial.
She should get the death penalty.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Hey, I'm happy that now that I watch Tiger King, as long as he you know, pardons Tiger King guy, I'll be happy.
Joe Exotic, yeah.
Joe, that's, yeah, I couldn't remember his name, Joe Exotic. Good luck. This world is, it's interesting. Okay, now we understand what third world countries go through. So, you know, we're,
Well, arguably now we are one.
nah, hopefully we're not. But, you know, I like to think we're not, but.
Yeah, same with me. Pretty crazy.
But that's a hard argument to fight. You know what I mean? Okay, make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, Kemper, aye.
Thanks.
Have a good
Thank you
night.
all. Good night.